what I love about this job. I mean, when you think about it, you meet the most interesting people doing the most interesting things on a daily basis. Wake up, have many, many conversations with fascinating industries, different geographies, get to have really interesting conversations. And as long as you continue to learn and be open, it can be an amazingly fulfilling career.
Welcome to Revenue Insights. We're joined by revenue leaders from some of the highest growth companies. Together, we explore how they built their revenue teams, the journeys they've been on, and the lessons they've learned along the way. Revenue Insights is brought to you by Ebsta. We're an AI-first revenue intelligence platform designed to help you close more deals, retain more customers, and forecast better. Enjoy the podcast.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Revenue Insight podcast. I'm thrilled today to have Dean Hickman-Smith on the show, a seasoned executive with over 20 years of experience in building and scaling InfoSec and identity companies through every phase of growth, from startup to IPO. As the current Chief Revenue Officer at HackerOne, Dean has helped scale multiple organizations and drive growth in complex sectors such as fintech, gaming, and healthcare. His deep expertise in building exceptional teams and implementing scalable processes has made him a key figure in the cybersecurity industry. Dean, welcome to the podcast and thank you for joining us.
Guy, thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Dean, let's start with an easy one for you. With such extensive career in InfoSec and identity space, can you share how you first got started in this field and what initially sparked your interest in building and scaling companies?
Yeah, very random way I started, actually. I was working for the government and I had come back from an overseas and I met a man on a train and he was sitting there with a laptop connected to a massive telephone. And I was just completely mesmerized by him working on a train, early 90s. And so I sat down and said, look, if I buy you a beer, can you tell me about what you're doing? And his name is Chris Abbey, and he's still a friend of mine to this day, probably in his late 70s. And I ended up working for him. So he was in the networking industry, put systems into mainly financial institutions, small ones in London back in that era. And we had lots of adventures together for a while. And then after that, I set up an incubator with some friends and we got into the world of startups. So I found out about the fabulous world of stock options and was completely fascinated by technology, mainly in information security.
So in other words, if you want to get started in cybersecurity, you've got to meet someone on train. Is that right?
I know it's random. I believe in opportunities, right? When you see something interesting, having a conversation with someone, there's no harm in it. It worked well. And it got me into American startups. I had a run of building out tech startups across Europe, Middle East, Africa. And then one of them started to get really big, a company called Netscreen, and got an opportunity to come to America. And then I went public, and then we were acquired by Juniper. I ran a piece of business for Juniper for a while. And that got me into some venture firms that helped move me along into some other startup opportunities. One of them was Proofpoint, and that went well in the messaging security space. And then I went back to the Netscreen crew and did a company called AeroHive, which we managed to get to an IPO. And more recently, I got introduced to HackerOne, which I absolutely love. It's a fascinating place to be. We are helping find the most elusive vulnerabilities for our customers and fix them. And we have the world's largest network of ethical hackers out there. It's over 2 million people on our platform.
Wow.
Finding vulnerabilities before the bad people do, and then helping customers fix them. So it's a lofty
Sounds
challenge.
fascinating.
It's a really, really cool space to be. And as I said, it's a great culture and I'm really enjoying it. And we're scaling particularly well right now. So very excited about the growth.
Yeah, you mentioned you had a busy quarter. Tell us about the size and shape of the team that you're managing.
Yeah, we're global. I'd say, 75, 80% of the business is still North America or the Americas. And we've got a big growth momentum going on across, I'll call it EMEA, as everyone does over here, but Europe, Middle East, less Africa at the moment, but we've got a number of customers in Africa that are starting to grow nicely. So we've opened up that operation. We're investing heavily in Europe. And then we opened up in Singapore to cover primarily ASEAN. And then later this year, we'll go into the Australian, New Zealand market. But we've got about 50 to 60 customers in ASEAN and Japan. Got a good couple of hundred customers or more in EMEA at the moment. And then the bulk of the business still is the Americas. But looking forward to really growing out the rest of the globe over the next couple of years.
No, it sounds very exciting. And how big is the sales team? How many heads are you responsible for?
Just over 70 sellers. We've got a team of pre-sales engineers that support them. And then we've really just started a channel team as well to start adding some extra, leverage. We're building out partners to augment that direct selling motion. And the hope is over the next 2 years, we will move more and more to an indirect selling motion, which is just a very efficient way of covering a larger number of customers. When you think about what we do, right, we find vulnerabilities. We can create a tremendous opportunity to partner with resellers, integrators, and other tech alliance partners to put together a complete solution to help customers remediate. So there's a tremendous value proposition there when you bring it all together.
Yeah, well, our regular listeners will know that we here at Ebsta, we partnered with Pavilion to create the B2B benchmark report, and we analyzed 4.7 million opportunities last year. One of the really interesting data points was looking at revenue coming from partners. And we saw just 10% of opportunities in the pipeline are generated through partners, but they now represent over 30% of the revenue that comes out on the other side. So it's such a phenomenal channel. And if you can go to market with a trusted advisor, the win rates are through the roof. And the data doesn't lie.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We've got a holiday coming up, Thanksgiving holiday next week. So I will read your report next week whilst I've got some time. But partners are like a third party to the customer. So they introduce you, they give you credibility. Typically, they've got history of doing business with those customers, so they know how to get the contracts done faster. And they make the paperwork process a lot easier. So I see so many benefits of working with partners, in addition to, of course, local language and cultural support. So we've got a lot going on with partners in a relatively short period of time. I think a lot of companies don't go fully into the partner mode. They don't orientate their marketing. They don't support the partners well enough, but we're trying to go heavily into that motion and support it properly.
We do the same. So, I know you're based in the US, even though you've got a British accent like me, but we have 60% of our customers are in North America, and we generate the vast majority of those through partners. It's a great route to market for all of us. And we obviously do incentivize them on the commercial side, but they're actually, in reality, the partners don't do it really for that. They're more interested in being able to deliver their service better. And I think if you're an ancillary thing, if you're outside of their core proposition, it's quite a difficult ask to get them to kind of take you to market. But if you can enhance what they do, then they just want to bring you into every deal. And that's kind of the lesson I learned from it anyway.
Yeah, and we're absolutely right there in the center of, I guess, two motions. One is just the cyber efficiency that we bring, right? We find vulnerabilities. We can make customers aware of vulnerabilities in their code even before they push the code to production. Then when they're in production, we can continually test code. So we can give customers early warning that there is code that is vulnerable. And then we can take that data and we can feed it into other offerings like SAST and DAST, or AS acronym soup. And we can just make their operations more effective over time. So we find stuff, we shift it left, they build it into their development process, the code gets built better. It makes perfect sense. Here you go.
Yeah.
Teaching me.
And that's very exciting. So you're at 70 sellers at the moment. Do you think that's going to grow, or is it more about making them a little bit more efficient? What's the focus for the year?
A good question. Actually, both. We're growing. We're opening up new markets. We're just hiring right now in the Middle East. We're hiring in Nordics. We're hiring in Latin America. We're adding some sort of segregation to the way we go to market. So we built a strat team that looks after our 150 customers. We have an enterprise team that's really focused on the larger enterprise play within our verticals. So within tech, within finance, fintech, and within government. And then we've got a commercial layer. So we're building out those teams. We're building out all of the back end stuff to really scale this for enterprise, class operations, 24/7 support. Just hired a new VP of customer operations who worked with me at AeroHive and Proofpoint. So we've got quite a lot of history there. And it's building. We're hiring. It's great to be in growth mode. And of course, building out that partner team, the go-to-market there as well.
And so do you expect the quotas for all of the sales teams to increase over the next year or remain, or I'm sure not, for drop? What's the theory on the targets?
I think they're going to hold steady. I think we're going to continue to see productivity gains. We're getting better at what we do. We're getting a better understanding of the mythical ICP. We're getting better signals on who's ready to buy. We've recently spent a lot of time on trying to break down silos in the company. So we have a growth team that talks to existing customers, and we have a new business team that goes out and hunts down new opportunities, backed by an SDR team and backed by a channel team, and of course backed by marketing and products and all the other things. But there was a weird silo between the two. So we'd hire a new person in New York, and that person would be targeted on net new logos, and they didn't spend any time really talking to the person that was there going to build business with our existing customers. So now we've broken those silos down so that everyone starts communicating a little bit better. The person, it sounds so basic, but it happens in companies where you sort of have a motion, like that's our new business motion, and it's totally separated from our upsell motion. So now we're trying to bring those teams together. We're trying to create more of a community model. We love our customers and they love us. So the best thing you can have is a customer talking to a prospect. So the events that we used to do for customers, we're now opening up to prospects, so they can just meet. They, in a very casual environment, they can talk and they can understand what it's like to work with HackerOne. We find that the most compelling way of making a potential customer feel comfortable with us. And likewise, we're opening up those events now to partners, so they can bring their prospects. And over time, you just start to build a community, and everyone starts to lean into that community and feel comfortable. And we're not really selling. No one's really selling in this world anymore. You're advising, you're putting content out, people are doing their own research. You've got to tap into that motion much more than 10, 15, 20 years ago. So the concept of community is very powerful at HackerOne, and we're really moving that motion now. We do a lot of events, which is why I'm hoarse right now, because I've been at many events around the world where we'll bring 50 to 100 people together. We'll give a little bit of a talk about where we're going. Then we'll have some of our researchers, our ethical hackers, talk about what they're seeing. Then we'll have some customers talk about what they're seeing and what they're getting out of the relationship. And then we just let them meet and sprinkle some food and beverages around, and everyone just talks for a couple of hours, and we come away with very powerful outcomes from those type of events. Yeah, we're doing a lot more in-person stuff now, which is great to see. Here we are sitting on a Zoom, but right now we've got to get out there again and meet people and start to network. There's a lot of power in community, and a lot of power in people actually meeting and just sharing experience.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of community. I'm quite active in the Pavilion community. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but I run the CEO. I'm the CEO ambassador for Pavilion, so I end up doing a lot of dinners with CEOs, and that gives an opportunity to, again, in a social environment, just hear what's going on in people's worlds and their lives, and it's amazing how often there's opportunity to help each other and support each other on that journey. And sometimes that's business related, and other times it's not. But I love this idea of kind of iron sharpening iron and supporting each other on our journeys. And the chances are the challenges I'm facing are the ones you dealt with recently, and vice versa. So I think there's a huge amount of value there in community.
I keep seeing the Pavilion connection on LinkedIn, and I don't know about it, so I will have a look at that as well. But there's nothing new here, right? I mean, we were doing this back in the 90s. That chap I talked about, Chris Abbey, used to do dinners, and he would be delighted if he knew I was talking about him on this corner. So there we go. But then when I went to Netscreen, my boss there was a guy called Mark Smith, and Robert Thomas, our CEO, he was always on the road. He was always doing these networking dinners. So I learned quickly that it's a very powerful thing. We introduced it at a Proofpoint, and our CEO there, Gary Steele, used to be on the road all the time doing basically a stand-up talk and then just a sit-down meal with potential customers and just let everybody mingle. So I was adamant that we were going to do it as soon as we could at HackerOne, and it's really starting to kick in now, and I love it. We've actually got a social side to the business now. We call it Community One, where we don't even talk, right? We just get 20 or 30 people together for a meetup in an area. It's a much lower budget, lower fanfare type thing, but that's really kicking in. And Each time we do it, a customer can sponsor it and bring their network in. And then, of course, we'll be doing a lot more things with partners over the foreseeable future. So we're starting to build out that partner one. Everything's something one here, but partner one is the next thing that we're doing, where we're building up partner sort of similar community meetups. And community also, of course, embodies the ethical hacking community, where there's more than 2 million people registered on the platform at any point. So it's also it's actually quite fun, just amazing to see the ethical hacking community coming together, because they're all over the planet and coming from a lot of emerging markets. So when we do a live hacking event in Asia or in Latin America, we're reaching out to that community and bringing them together as well. And this thing is changing quite a few people's lives. So it's a nice byproduct to be here at HackerOne.
Oh, I love all of that. I mean, one of the principles that drove me to build Ebsta in the first place was understanding the fact that relationships drive revenue in B2B sales. So knowing that relationships drive revenue in B2B sales was what took us down this journey of trying to understand every relationship customers are we engage with during the customer life cycle. And when we engage with them at each stage, and what influence does it have? One of the great data points we saw this year was how influential the finance persona is in the buying journey, and the impact of bringing that finance persona into the buying journey earlier versus presenting back the solution to them later in the sales cycle. And we saw it had a material impact on win rates if you can get that finance persona involved much earlier. So that's kind of what drove my journey here at Ebsta. Our first solution had nothing to do with revenue intelligence. It was just, can we find all the relationships you're engaging with during a sales cycle and score how well you've engaged with them, and understand how influential that engagement score is on win rates. And that kind of took us down a journey where we are now, as doing revenue intelligence, pipeline inspection, and forecasting. But this principle that relationships drive revenue hasn't gone away. Even in today's world where everything is AI driven, we still find that relationships are absolutely key in B2B sales. And quantifying what a relationship is and codifying it and scoring it has kind of taken us on this amazing journey for the last 10 years.
We'll return to the episode in a moment. This podcast is brought to you by Ebsta. Every year, we produce the B2B Sales Benchmarks Report. It provides insights from the analysis of billions of revenue dollars, revealing what attributes drive top sales performance and highlighting where time and money are wasted. To get early access to this year's benchmarks report, sign up for our newsletter at ebsta.com/newsletter. Now, back to Revenue Insights.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, actually. We were big fans of Medic. I am a huge fan of MedPick and really understanding who signs what's the paper process in the deal. And one of the most powerful questions is asking your champion, okay, who last time you did something like this, who signed off on it? What was the process you had to go through to make sure that you are 100% aligned on that mutual close plan? Otherwise, I guarantee something will trip you up, particularly in this economic climate. If you're not mapping all of those events that lead to a mutual outcome within a certain time frame, the deal's going to slip. So we do a lot of work on getting it involved in the finance persona, what that paper process is, or on the legal side, what that paper process looks like, who's got to sign off, who's got to touch this, and bringing them into the selling process early to make sure that we're going to come together with an outcome that meets our expectations and those of the customer.
That's fascinating. And I spent a lot of time looking at Medic and MedPick and Bant and Spice and so on. As you can imagine, all sorts of customers using all sorts of qualification methodologies. We didn't see a huge gap in the results, in the outcomes, if they use one over another. In general, using the simplest one you can for your business model is usually the route to market. But what we did see is a big split there's a world of difference in teaching the sales team on how to apply a Medic or a MedPick to a qualification journey, and then teaching them how to record it manually in the system of record. And I think one of the things that's kind of come about this year is that AI is finally here. It took us 20 minutes to get to AI. I think we did quite well. We live in a world now where AI can do the admin so much better than the salespeople can. And so we built it into, we found that there was a lot of qualification going on, but it was wildly different between the top performers and the B and C players. So if you can really consistently introduce that, if you can get one of the things we've introduced was effectively a green thumbs up or a red thumbs down if the rep has if the seller has qualified the customer well enough to lead discovery, and allowing the AI to score it to a point where it's not down to what words they put in after the call. The AI will score it, and if they and they only need a couple of red thumbs down before suddenly they want to change the way they're doing their qualification and they want to get better at doing it. So I think what we saw last year, before kind of AI became kind of prevalent, we saw a lot of energy going in to teach people how to do these medic or medpic kind of qualification journeys. But then we were falling at the hurdle in actually getting it recorded. And so they might well be doing the good work, but if we can't report on it, then we can't help them get better faster. And the beauty of AI now is that we can have a consistent AI bot that's doesn't matter which of the 70 sellers you're talking to. It's extracting all of the objections the customer raised on the call, all of the medic or medpic capture, and scoring it for you, so you can start comparing like apples with apples. And you can extract information like what competitors are being mentioned, and at the end of the month, you can see if that's peaked or dropped off. And suddenly, the data that's coming across, the AI can give us so much more consistent insights. And finally, sales teams can be much more data driven. And I think that's why it's such an early stage for sales teams. I think, frankly, we're probably the last department to actually get data driven. So are you using, what AI have you got in your sales stack at the moment?
So in our sales stack, we're using a lot of research tools on the AI side. And then we're applying, I think we're probably still early in our AI journey. I think AI, you mentioned, almost like a constant coach, is not where we're at yet. I think we're getting there. We're getting better at using AI. We're doing a lot of pre-call analysis using AI. We're doing a lot of post-event analysis using AI, and it's giving us much better calibration than we ever had. I think we're still in a phase, as we've built out the team quite significantly. We're still in a bit of a calibration mode where we're trying to get everybody to talk the same language. Our platform has evolved so much in the last year that we're still in an enablement mode, even about AI in our platform and what that means. We've gone from lots of humans doing stuff to lots of humans still doing stuff, but their work being collated and analyzed and turned into actionable intelligence through AI. We launched a thing called Hi about 9 months ago, which is that collation, benchmarking, and recommendations engine. Incredibly powerful, but just enabling the team to be able to talk coherently about, from a security and a safety perspective, really important. So we're earlier on the journey still of improving. I think if people are honest, many are, right? There are many companies where they rapidly enable people. They kick them out the door. They think they're all saying the same things, applying the same methodologies, and I guarantee them. So you got to go back in and do the constant coaching. We've done some work on coaching, so our managers are more active in that coaching program. And we've done a lot of work on really building focus on who is likely to get the most value from our product. So really the much used phrase ICP, but really breaking it down so that our enterprise sellers have a target list of 20 tier ones and 20 tier twos, that our SDR team, who are using a lot of AI, by the way, for intent and message creation and follow-up and orchestration of their campaigns. That's probably where the most sophisticated use of AI is at the moment. But we've done a lot of work on the targeting side, making people more efficient. That's really paying off. Our productivity is starting to improve. But over the next year or two, I think we're going to really start to see more constant coaching mode that you were just referring to, where AI is really giving you these indicators. I think there's a tremendous analogy. My hobby is flying, and AI in aircraft prevents a pilot from doing something inappropriate before that person can do it. And I think we're going to start to see that a lot more in the selling motion, in what you say, how you say it, where you say it, where you're at in the selling process, how you follow up. Didn't want to make a tenuous relationship to flying, but it was the only thing I could think of as sort of evolutionary where we're at. I think we're going to see it over the next 12 to 24 months that the calibration can be a lot more trusted and can be really, really valuable. So very much a focus 12 months going.
Yeah, we bet the farm on it. When we look at the data, and again, it looks like you're beating the benchmarks, but at the moment that we're seeing that only 1 in 5 reps 1 in 5 sellers is consistently hitting quota. and the delta between those top performers and the B and C players is getting wider and wider and wider. And I think the reason we've recently introduced our own brand guarantees, but we guarantee to increase the number of reps hitting quota now, is because it's not rocket science. But what we need to do is just introduce that consistency. Once we understand what those top performers are doing at every stage of the sales cycle, what we need to do is help the B and C players follow suit. And the good news is they want to win. They desire to have, to get closer to those A players as quickly as they can. And when you show it to them in kind of picture format, that look, on average, over the last 12 months of all the deals you've done, you have 3 stakeholders actively involved in the sales cycle, and your win rates are 12%. But look, when you get 6 or more, our win rates are up at 32%. Right. And all of a sudden, once they see it, the penny starts to drop. Or you show them, look, when you have, the finance persona engaged at stage 2, this is your win rate. And when they don't engage in stage 5, this is your win rate. And suddenly it all starts to make a lot of sense. All these things you've been preaching to them for a long time, suddenly it starts to make a lot of sense. And now they want to win, and that drives the right behavior. And if we can combine that consistency and that consistent behavior at the same time as using AI to take away all the admin burden, the stuff they don't really want to do anyway, and logging their activity, pre-populating the med pick and things like that, suddenly they're now freed up and they understand what's expected of them. And it's that kind of consistent approach, which I think is going to take the industry by storm, because there's so much inefficiencies in the way sales teams operate. It's crazy that 4 out of 5 reps are missing quota still. And the answer, most businesses, sorry.
No. Your stat, 1 in 5 is hitting quota that's just sad, right? Is that a function, do you think, of poor quota setting in addition to aspirational quota setting, in addition to under par enablement?
As leaders, I think it's our fault. I think that we've, rather than investing in educating the team and enabling them and supporting them and giving them the tools they need to replicate the top performers' behaviors, we just rather spend a shitload more money on marketing, generate a load more leads, and then beat them up when they miss their number, and hire a load, and then go and get rid of those lot, and then hire a load more, probably underperformers from somebody else's business, and then suddenly we're surprised that they didn't hit quota either, and just hoping we're going to get a good one is not the answer, right? We as leaders have failed our sellers in a lot of ways, because, as you rightly say, we've set quotas that perhaps no one's hit before, not consistently. We then expect them to convert leads that maybe aren't ICP, right? You talk a lot about ICP. I'm a big fan of that analysis. And one of the things we saw in the last 6 months is a big increase in leads being generated, right? A lot more money is being spent on marketing. But the number of leads that match ICP hasn't changed. And so as a percentage, it's actually gone down. And so if you're not helping your sellers understand that, if you're, we make the mistake of beating up our sellers because they're closing off too many opportunities as lost earlier stage, when in fact that's exactly what they should be doing. So there's a lot of misunderstandings there. And I think leaders haven't necessarily been giving our sellers the tools and the consistency that they need to win.
You touched on some really interesting points there, actually. I am all about preparing. I firmly believe in perfect preparation prevents piss poor performance. It is, it's not preparation prevents. You've got to do it well, right? You've got to train well, no matter what you're doing. If you're playing golf or you're trying to do a marathon or whatever, you've got to train well, perfectly, to prepare for anything. So if your enablement's not good and it's not delivered in a way that's acceptable to the field, and now we live in a pretty virtual training environment. So you don't even have the benefit of the teams getting together that often to swap best practices. So you've got to overcome that dynamic. Everyone's virtually distributed. You've got to deliver training in a way that's captivating and people enjoy and are excited to do. So it's got to be modular. It's got to be short. It's got to be absorbable. And they've got to do it. And you've got to monitor that people are doing the training. And you've got to put enough effort into the preparation to deliver the result. If I was getting 1 in 5 to quota, I would feel that was my personal failure. I try and take obstacles out of the way for the field. We radically revamped the way we enable people. Everything is now bite-sized. Everything's very modular. You can learn at your own pace. You can download reminders. We have a tremendous repository of content that people can go back to. It's beautifully indexed, so you can sort by industry, so that you can brief before you go and see a customer, so that you've got a hypothesis that's going to be relevant to a customer. So you're immediately able to add value. There's a whole bunch of things that we've done that try and put content that's really relevant in front of the team. And yeah, my expectation is that I'm going to ramp people quickly. They're going to be productive. I'm going to set quotas that people are going to achieve, exceed. And yeah, at the end of the day, they're going to be personally successful. They're going to enjoy the journey, and they're going to be commercially successful. They're going to make a lot of money achieving the goals that we have for them. So I think the leaders have got to wake up and understand all those new dynamics, particularly the virtualization of the sales force. I didn't grow up that way. You know, we had sales floors, and I loved that vibe. I really enjoyed meeting my colleagues and understanding how they're being successful. And then the conversation would go on afterwards over a beer, and you'd learn quickly what works and what doesn't. We've even created a virtual sales floor in Slack, so people can just throw ideas into Slack about, hey, this worked. What do you think? And there's a lot more banter that way. So lots of things to think about. But
No, I buy into all of that. I think again, if salespeople have got a limited capacity for learning, I think one of the mistakes we'd be making is investing too much time in teaching them things that the AI can do better than they can. Because the AI is really bad at building relationships. It's really bad at building trust. It's really bad at understanding use cases and ROIs and closing deals. And that's what salespeople are excellent at, right? All the rest of it, all the admin around it, all the reporting, well, that's bloody awesome at it, right? You know, the AI is excellent at that stuff. And I think historically we spent a lot of time beating people up for the stuff, for the admin piece that they were never very good at anyway. And with AI in place, we can really focus our energies on making sure that they are able to build that trusted relationship with the customer. They can ask the right questions and really get under the skin of the challenges. And it's really interesting. Last year, we analyzed 1.2 million hours of sales calls, and the difference between the way that the A players talk to their prospects and customers and the way the B and C players do is night and day. The A players are talking to them. Well, tell me about the other 7 projects you've got on right now. You know, where does this fit in your priorities? And, you know, what ROI are you expecting on this? And if we delivered that, well, you know, what would that world look like? And if we didn't, you know, if we don't do this, you know, what happens in that world? And how are you personally influenced by this? And the B and C players are almost, you know, lovely to meet you, sit down, shut up, let me show you how the buttons work. And it's night and day. And what it leads to is that when the A players pick up the phone to the C-suite for the second time or the third time, they're delighted to take the call because last time they added so much value to the conversation. While the B and C players are, you know, it's not that they don't want to engage with the C-suite, but the engagement levels are materially lower because the C-suite don't want to talk to them. You know, I don't need to talk to another annoying salesperson, but actually there's a solutions provider, that expert advisor that helped me understand something I didn't really know about that space because maybe I don't buy this stuff every day. You know, suddenly that's the person I want in my life and I want to help me on my journey. So yeah, I think as leaders, we can double down and focus on that piece of the puzzle, and the impact is almost immediate. You know, we pride ourselves on getting customers live in the first 30 days, so we can influence this quarter's numbers. But once you start showing those B and C players how to win, it's amazing how quickly they want to follow suit.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, everything you said is akin to honestly what I've tried to do in my entire career is just bring value to the conversation, is to do the research up front, to have I used to call it a value hypothesis. I think that was a spin selling back in the year 2000. But that's what matters, right? You bring credibility through having a hypothesis that is valuable to the potential customer. And then you have to bring trust by having repeatedly done that with a bunch of their peers. So when they do check out that Guy Rubin is who Guy Rubin really says he is, and that his claim that he's bringing value is substantiated by a network of people that are within their trust network. And that's how it grows. And you do that 2 or 3 times, and all of a sudden you can start to build your network nationally, then globally. And it doesn't become easy because you've still got to continue to practice. You still got to do your training. You still got to practice your craft to continue to bring value. But that trust network goes with you, and it's really important to build. So that's what I love about this job. I mean, when you think about it, you meet the most interesting people doing the most interesting things on a daily basis. Wake up, have many, many conversations with fascinating industries, different geographies, get to have really interesting conversations. And as long as you continue to learn and be open, it can be an amazingly fulfilling career. So I love bringing people up through the ranks and growing and scaling the team as much as I do the business itself.
Well, Dean, I've really enjoyed the chat today. I hope the listeners enjoyed it as well as much as I did. If they want to get in touch with you, Dean, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, less actively, but I'm on LinkedIn. Just search for Dean Hickman-Smith with a little hyphen. Actually, any version of Dean Hickman-Smith, I think there's only one out there. Or deanhackerone.com is my work email address. So I love to help network, continue to build that network. And we have so many events around the world that, please just monitor the HackerOne website, and we can meet up at one of our events around the globe coming up. In fact, we'll be at Black Hat in London in a couple of weeks, and looking forward to that.
Well, I hope to see you when you're in London. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really enjoyed the chat, and good luck with next year's growth. It sounds very exciting.
Thanks, Guy. I really enjoyed the conversation too, and look forward to more going forwards. All the best. Have a great end of the year.
Everyone too.
Thanks for listening to Revenue Insights from Ebsta. If you want to learn more from some of the brightest minds on how to predictably and efficiently grow revenue, then subscribe to our newsletter. We'll deliver actionable insights straight to your inbox. Go to ebsta.com/newsletter. See you soon.